I am standing in the vineyards at Stoller Family Estate, and I'm here with Rob, who is the head vineyard. What is the title you take?
Vineyard manager.
Vineyard manager. And it was just about 6 months ago that we were out here in early spring, and you were talking about how you pruned the grapes a specific way. Now, we're going to be talking about another thing that you're going to be doing now. Is that called?
We're going to be thinning the fruit out, so we're going to be dropping excessive fruit.
And to a home gardener, we might be screaming at the thought of that because we want every single cluster there is. What's the logic for doing that?
Yeah, growing wine grapes is different than growing table grapes. So if you're growing table grapes, that's not my expertise. I only know about growing wine grapes, and the grapevine and the grapes themselves can only produce a certain amount of flavor compounds.
Yeah.
And so you want to concentrate as much of the flavor in as few of the berries.
And what is is there a process of, this is like, I remember this was how you taught us to prune last year, this specific pruning technique, so you would get constant grapes everywhere. And how do you know how many to take off then from that?
Okay, so you have to pay attention to the growth of the vine. And if you can record the date that your flowers are about 50% open, or about 50% of the flowers are open, 50 days beyond that, the grapes are typically entering into lag phase, which is when the clusters are now concentrating on developing the seeds, making them viable. And during that period of time, the grapes stop increasing in size.
Okay.
And they're at, in Pinot Noir, about 50% of what they'll weigh at harvest. So you can take a survey of how many grapes on average you have, or clusters on average you have per vine, and then weigh them at 50 days post 50% bloom, and you can project then how many tons per acre you'll have. Typically, wineries don't like to see more than, in Pinot Noir, 2.5 or 3 tons to the acre, and in Chardonnay, 3 to 3.5 tons.
So one of the other things that you'd mentioned that you do in this vineyard, because of the way the sun is, you actually take leaves off of one side and leave more leaves on the other.
Right. When your rows are oriented north-south, you can maximize the exposure, the sun exposure, and help ripening. But because the flavors are developed in the grapes by exposure to sunlight, you need to expose the grapes to the sun. But the afternoon sun is really powerful, 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, like right now. So I remove leaves from the eastern side of the grapes, and I leave the western side with leaves still on them. And you get morning sun on your clusters, but you protect them from the afternoon sun.
And all of this is done because different grapes do different things in wine. So now we're going to take a break. I'm going to go up and we're going to talk to Melissa about why these different things are done and the different flavors it makes in the wine. So I'm here with Melissa now, and we are sitting in front of the beautiful Stoller Family Estate tasting room. And so now here's the thing, Melissa. We talked to Rob. We saw how the pruning happened and how they dropped the different grapes. I want to know, what specifically is the difference? Like, are there certain wines that you do certain reasons, and what are the reasons behind them? Is it flavor? What's the choices you make there?
Sure. Well, yes, as Rob mentioned, there's a lot of reasons for dropping grapes. It's a marginal climate. You want to ensure ripeness.
Sure.
But when I think about making the wines, yes, it depends on the wine, how much fruit we may or may not drop.
So then it really does depend not only on the different types of wine you're making, but from year to year as well?
Absolutely.
Wow.
There's both, and then there's elevation in mind also. So we've got, our vineyard is positioned between 200 and 650 feet. The top of the hill ripens anywhere from a week and a half to 3 weeks later.
Wow.
So a lot of times I will drop more fruit at the top of the hill and less at the warmer part of the bottom.
Because the warmer part gets riper faster? I mean, what's the logic there?
Correct. The warmer part, there's more of an assurance that that warmer section is going to ripen that fruit. Whereas with our climate, sometimes either rains, you're considering all these dynamics, you want to ensure that the top of the hill gets ripe and has that balance. And also the top of the hill is where a lot of our reserve sections are for Pinot Noir. And I tend to want to crop those a little lower to guarantee that I'll get the concentration and quality that I want.
So Melissa, how do you crop differently for different varieties of wine?
That's a good question. So looking at this one, this is our Pinot Noir Rosé. This is a red wine that you process like a white wine. And what that means for cropping is we'll farm specifically for rosé, and a lot of times we will keep more crop on because I'm really looking at retaining a lot of acidity and keeping that freshness versus making a Pinot Noir red wine, which I'll usually crop lower.
Yeah.
So that will translate with Chardonnay. It depends. Some of our lower elevation Chardonnay I crop a little heavier than the Pinot Noir because again, I'm trying to retain freshness and get that nice balance. So
Lovely.
It depends on what wine, what section, and what year.
Because that really is, you really are working for the consistency year to year in your wines and really making sure that they meet the high standards that you set for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you know, every time we come out here, I absolutely adore coming out to Stoller and visiting and tasting these amazing wines. You can go to gardentime.tv. We'll click you over to their website. You can get the hours that the tasting room is open. They have this wonderful cheese platter that come out with the wine. It's really a beautiful place. So thank you so much for inviting us again and letting us be a part of this beautiful place,
Of
Melissa.
course. You guys are a part of the place. Of course. Yes. My pleasure.